Okay, Ken's back, this time from Managua, Nicaragua, and we got to deal with the noise. I don't know what else to do about it. I tried turning down the volume on the streets of Managua, but it doesn't work, so we'll just have to deal with it for right now. So this is a video that's kind of a follow-up on the previous video about John Ed. And so I'm calling it Pastor Fat Ass. And people say, I'm sure you are. You shouldn't really call him Pastor Fat Ass. However, I'll give Josh Kettleson the benefit for now of referring to him as a pastor, although I understand that some people say, well, no one like that really is a pastor now, are they? In 2018, there was a violent episode in my family, which resulted not too long after that with Tim and I sitting in Pastor Kettleson's office there on Bingham Road, Immanuel Lutheran Church. And it wasn't long before Pastor Badass, Josh Kettleson, asked him, as a child, was there abuse in your family? Tim didn't answer. It was a few seconds before Tim was sitting in the chair across from Kettleson, blubbering like a baby, crying his eyes out, weeping, unable to speak. Just a question. Mind you, it was just a question from Kettleson. Was there abuse in your family when you were a child? And it was just that question, that simple question, that had Tim blubbering like a baby in the chair across from Josh Kettleson, unable to speak or to answer his question. Finally, when he could choke out the words, it was a simple yes between the sobs. Tim, what you witnessed, and yes, you only witnessed it, what you witnessed John Ed doing, had you blubbering like a baby at the age of 53, just because someone asked you, was there abuse in your family when you were a child? That simple question brought forward the memories which had you blubbering like a baby for not a little bit, but for minutes on end, unable to speak. You just witnessed it, Tim. And almost a half a century later, it had you blubbering like a baby just to think about it. I am the one John Ed did it to. I am the one he beat continually. I am the one that as a child, sick with the flu, on a drizzly, rainy, November, cold day, at 8 years old, he had out working in the drizzling November cold and beating when I wouldn't work fast enough for him. And that's not the only time. What he did for that decade to me while we were on that farm had you bawling like a baby just to think about it. You weren't the one he did it to. I was. Tim just answered him yes when he could squeeze out the word, and it went from there. When I told Josh Kettleson who was dealing out all the abuse, and not just to me, but also to my father. Josh Kettleson called me mentally ill. Told me it couldn't possibly happen. Told me that John Ed couldn't possibly have done it. No, it was possible. And it wasn't just me. Everyone involved at the time, everyone in that family, including Mary Corrine and Penny Kay, knew about it and justified it. They justified it continually at the time. And they will justify it within the family. To this day, they will justify it. The only time they won't justify it is when someone outside the family asks them about it. Then they'll tell Josh Kettleson it couldn't possibly have happened. No, it happened, Josh Kettleson. But Josh continued to defame and yes, abuse me. It's a continuation of the abuse to call me mentally ill over and over again, telling me I was hallucinating it all. No, that's what he said. He said I was so mentally ill that when I told him who was dealing out the abuse, he called me a mentally ill person who was hallucinating the whole thing. It's not all John Ed did. You want to hear the stories of John Ed? You talk to Tim, how he cheated my father. Tim called me with stories about John Ed cheating my father out of land, out of cattle, out of tractors. In 2018, there was an act of violence in my family, which got that whole episode that I just told you about in the office of Josh Kettleson underway. At that time, Jim Gerhardt told me that violence is the way this family straightens people out. Jim Gerhardt told that to me. If you didn't say it, Jim, maybe it's time now for you to tell me that what you said was wrong, instead of lying about saying it. You said it. You said violence in this family is the way people are straightened out. Yes, that's true. What Jim said was true. That's the way they view violence. That's the way they justify violence. And family is soaked in violence. It always has been. And I am tired of covering up for them. I'm not going to cover up for them any longer. I'm going to blow the lid off them. I'm going to expose them to the world until they decide to change. When they decide to change, I've worked for 50 years in this family to change this family, to end the violence and the abuse. It never works. Josh Kettleson told me that Jim Gerhardt didn't say that. Did Jim Gerhardt tell you he didn't say that? No, Jim Gerhardt said that. You sat over there at the Lutheran church with your icon to John Ed, but know that I'm not going to remain silent about it. The whole world is going to know that you're honoring an abuser. Someone who abused for his entire life and was able to do so because of a family and a church that were enabling it, and that the abuse hasn't ended. It goes on to this day through people like the people that carried out that act of violence, through people like Patsy Gramlich, who justify it and enable it, and Jim Gerhardt, and Penny Kay, and Mary Corrine, and Josh Kettleson.
He can't do that. Well, he did it.